And we're all set.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is David Aarons. I use he, him as pronouns. I'm an assistant dean of admissions at Carleton College, which is, as you might hear, a similar themes, a small liberal arts college. We are located in Northfield, Minnesota, so 45 minutes south of the Twin Cities. I'm an alum of the college as well. I graduated the class of 2022, so really happy to be here to talk about some of those experiences that you can find at a liberal arts college. And I'll pass it over to my neighbor at Macalester, Rebecca.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Klein. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an assistant director of admissions at Macalester College. Like David said, we are just down the road in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the Twin Cities. Macalester is also a small liberal arts college, 2,200 students. Again, you'll hear all these themes a few times today as the three of us chat about our colleges. I am also an alum of Macalester from the class of 2018. So happy to chat about the specifics of being a liberal arts student as I was one myself. And yeah, happy to be here today. I'll throw it over to Maddie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maddie Brown. I'm also a graduate of the liberal arts and specifically my college, Gettysburg College, which is maybe a little bit closer than these other two. Gettysburg is in southern Pennsylvania. Really, if you know the Battle of Gettysburg from the Civil War, you are steps from our campus. And we actually did predate the Civil War. But I'm an associate director of admission and I've been working for Gettysburg since 2018, almost since I graduated. But that is me, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions. I also deal with transfer students and athletes as well.
Yeah, so as Kate mentioned, I think this is just a casual conversation, really. We really want to hear from you. We hope that you put questions in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself, you can also use like the raise hand function. But I just want to, I think, kick it off, if that's okay, to just talk a little bit about some of the aspects about why you might want to consider a liberal arts college. Ooh, that's a great question. We can get to that in a second. The abbreviations. Um, yeah, so I think for all of us, right, we're all small schools. I know Rebecca specifically mentioned just like 2,200 students, Carleton's 2,000 students. Maddie, could I get the number?
2,200 as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so all of those may be smaller than your high school, might be the same size as your high school. But really what that means is that you're going to get to know so many people on our campuses. And I think we're all relatively residential, and so we provide our like an opportunity to spend time on campus, really committing to that sense of community. And so even before we talk about academics, knowing that there is that like deep sort of community focus. And I think we might use the phrase like intentionally small, right? We're not trying to grow our student populations. We are schools that pride ourselves on having those small communities. And I think that that sort of informs the social context just from the get-go. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, the way that I see it, I think the major themes that we will probably get into today are, like David said, the community, not just with your peers, but also with faculty, with staff, with everyone else who is involved in the community, and then also the academic side. So we can definitely spend time on both of those different sides because I think that both of those are unique in a small liberal arts context. But I do think that as you're thinking about what kind of colleges might be a good fit for you, thinking about what kind of community will feel right for you is a really good place to start. So I think that's a good thing to focus on too.
Yeah, I think the small class sizes is a really huge benefit and a feature that all liberal arts colleges really typically have when they are the size of the three of our colleges. You're going to have only 15 to 20 students in a class on average, right? At Gettysburg, we run classes of 8 or 9 students sometimes. You won't be in a big lecture hall with 100 or 200 or, more people. So you will not only get to know your classmates, super quickly, super well, but you will get to know or have the opportunity to know your professors on a more personal level as well. And we are more focused on the teaching, if you will, a teacher's college rather than a research-oriented institution, meaning that during the academic year, the priority of our professors is teaching their classes. And yes, they are PhDs in their field. Yes, they have their own research going on, but their priority is you. And they may only teach 2 or 3 classes at a time, meaning that they only have, maybe 40 or 50 total students. So they really have time to pay attention to you in and out of the classroom. So I urge you to build those connections as you can outside of the classroom, going to their open office hours that they may offer outside of class. But the other piece of that, right, is sorry, I'm diving into academics a little bit more here, but is the research opportunities that come with that too. I think sometimes because we are not considered a research or R1 institution, students think that there is no research opportunities or little research opportunity, where there is arguably more, or it is more accessible to get those research opportunities because it is a smaller campus. Your professors know you, so they may reach out to you to help with their research, or you may be able to get involved or sign up to help with their research more easily than at a larger campus where you're fighting with potentially graduate level students, doctoral level students for those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, worth sort of hitting that on the head again, that there are no graduate students on our campuses. And so really what Maddie is saying is that the professors are there for you is truly the case. They want to be there to work with undergraduate students. They want to teach undergraduate students, and they want to conduct research with undergraduate students. And so all of those opportunities are available just for you. And so it is really, really easy to do that. And I guess to share a personal experience, I did research when I was a student at Carleton. And the way I got that opportunity was I literally just like cold emailed the professor one day. I sent her an email. I was like, hey, I'm kind of bored this term, like would love to do something. And she got back to me and was like, hey, like I have funding and I could hire you as my research assistant next week. Like, let's get the ball rolling. It was that easy. There's no like formal application really, although some of the STEM departments do have like more popular research fields where you might have to submit like a Google form or two, but really they want to work with you. They're there to get to know you. And so that sort of support network, I think, ties into not only the community aspect and people just knowing people on our campuses, but also the fact that professors are there to support you and they want to get to know your face. They want to see you succeed, not only in their classes, but just across the board as a whole. And so I think that those like tight-knit relationships and that intentionally smallness and that intentionally small community is both a factor at play in the community and sort of the social environment, but also absolutely the academic environment. I'm looking at the amount of people that are in this Zoom room right now, and this is like maybe even slightly larger than some of our average class sizes. And so there is a really sort of sense of smallness and ability to learn from one another. The other thing to maybe pivot a little bit, Rebecca, sorry, I just saw you unmuted, is to talk about some of just the curriculum broadly, right? Because we are undergraduate institutions, there are no like graduate programs or specific schools associated with us. So thinking big picture, right? A university will have other schools under it, like maybe a business school, like an arts and sciences school that is its liberal arts college, or like an engineering school, or like a medical school or something like that. Our colleges are literally just colleges. And so big universities are trying to do what we just simply do in our existence. They're trying to break things down and make them small, where our colleges are already small from the get-go. And so we are very flexible to begin with, right? Students are coming into our schools typically undecided. They're taking tons of different courses across curriculum, and they're sort of seeking out different academic opportunities than just one particular path. Like you're not going to enroll in the business program at at Carleton or at Macalester at Gettysburg and just be taking business classes for the rest of your life. You'll be taking classes on a wide array of subjects, and that will make you, honestly, if you are interested in business, an even stronger business leader because you will have done all of these broad things that companies and graduate programs are interested in. So you'll be a stronger writer, a stronger speaker, a stronger leader than students who are just following this one rote path. And so big picture, before we get into like really nitty gritty specifics, which we can, is that there is a great deal of flexibility that our colleges offer there.
Yeah, what we usually phrase it as is that at a liberal arts college, you'll get both breadth and depth in your education. So you'll get breadth by taking classes across lots of different areas. Some schools will have things like general education requirements that will encourage students to try out lots of different areas a little bit. So you have lots of different kinds of courses under your belt before you graduate. So you have that breadth by exploring different things, and you also have depth by choosing a major, minor, concentration, some combination of all of those things, and going really deeply into that as that is your specialty before you graduate. So the skills that you learn, like David mentioned, are going to be applicable in lots of different areas. Now, are you necessarily going to be choosing a major that is directing you directly towards one career? Maybe not, but the skills that you are going to learn from whatever major you choose are going to be applicable in tons of different careers. So happy to talk about like what life after a liberal arts college looks like too, maybe a little bit later.
I think this is a good transition to Kate's question just about why we chose liberal arts college and like what our majors were. And just right, broad disclaimer, there's at any school you'll go to, there's no admissions major. So when I was at Carleton, I was a biology and Chinese double major with an art history minor. And now I'm on the international recruitment team at Carleton. So leaning into Chinese as like a language and sort of as a culture to study. And then also now I get to travel there on behalf of the college. So that sort of was like my career trajectory in like 2 sentences.
Since I'm unmuted, I'll go next. To be honest with you, at your ages, probably, I'm assuming you're all like rising seniors, maybe some rising juniors in here, but I had no idea what the liberal arts meant. I was touring colleges just really based on location and size and the town they're in, and sports was part of my decision making in my process. And for the longest time, I kind of just associated the word liberal with politically liberal versus conservative. And come to find out, that's not really the meaning. And so I kind of learned, and developed a value for the liberal arts just over the course of my 4 years at Gettysburg College. But I did intend on double majoring in political science and international affairs, which is what I ended up doing at Gettysburg. And I think that actually highlights another benefit of the liberal arts is that flexibility to double major. I've seen a triple major at my college. We also offer self-designed majors or an individualized kind of major, if you will. So that goes to show how liberal and how flexible, how much freedom you have in the majors, because you can, get there and say, I have no idea what I want to study, or you can get to college and say, I know I want to double major, and you can do that, right? Because the curriculum is that flexible, you may only be required to take 12 or 13 classes for one of your majors, right? So therefore you have all this other time in your 4 years to possibly pursue a minor or a second major, or do something else. So that was pretty long-winded, but I would say I didn't really intend to choose it because it was a liberal arts school, but now I'm happy I did because I can articulate the benefit of taking classes outside of my majors, right? And other benefits of a private residential college campus experience.
Yeah, so why I chose a liberal arts school, I went to a high school that was about 1,600 students, so kind of mid-sized. I had classes that were in the 20s and 30s in high school, and it was fine, but I felt like a smaller classroom would probably be a better fit for me. Um, I actually grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and so I ended up going a little further away from home for college, which was pretty scary at first, but ended up being a really good choice for me. And I just really liked the idea of, like we are already talked about, getting to know your professors really well. They know you, they know your learning style, they're really invested in your well-being. That residential feeling, community on campus was really important to me too. So that's how I sort of ended up at a small liberal arts college. And just to answer Meg's question really quickly, the difference between a SLAC and an LAC is just the S is for small. So small liberal arts college versus liberal arts college, just a small difference there. My major at Macalester was anthropology. I was a French minor. I did not know what anthropology was before I got to college. It is the study of humans broadly. There's lots of different subdisciplines within that. But like we mentioned earlier, often at places like our colleges, students come in undecided. You can declare what you want to major in if you know already right away. That's totally fine. But lots of students will take some time to try different classes and figure out what they want to study before they choose their major. We say it's you explore before you specialize, right? You can try out lots of different things and figure out what works for you. So at Macalester, you don't have to declare a major until spring of your sophomore year. So you have 3.5 or so semesters to try things out until you have to choose one. I declared my major at the beginning of my sophomore year because I had taken an intro level class in anthropology and really liked it. Maddie says same at Gettysburg. And then I'd taken French since the 6th grade. I knew I wanted to study abroad somewhere French speaking, so I kept up with my classes in college to prepare for that and ended up with a minor kind of just by accident. So that worked out really well too. So yeah, that's
To add to that, Carleton's ever so slightly different in the caveat that no student is declaring their major earlier than the spring term of sophomore year. That's when
Mm.
all of our students declare. But to Rebecca's point, like you can still come with a plan, or like if you know that you're, for me, like I knew I was interested in biology at the time, and so I was like, I'm gonna take biology classes right away and like really start enjoying this department and like getting to know people in the department. But I didn't formally declare it as a biology major just until the spring term of sophomore year, because especially in those first 2 years, right, it is about that exploration, and that's why we allow students to not declare their major until that point. We want students to take courses across curriculums in many different departments and many different fields, knowing again, sort of thinking beyond just the 4 years in your time at our colleges, that those experiences might be some of the best ones to prepare you well for that future career or that future graduate program that you may have never even started thinking about until it was like senior year. And so that exploration early on, I think, is really integral into finding out some of your actual passions. And you can absolutely come to our colleges with your high school passions in mind and pursue them, but you can also have the freedom to go down completely different routes. And so I think that is just a really appealing thing for a lot of students, and certainly was for me when I was considering colleges. And I ended up with so much more than a biology degree, right? And I think that that was really indicative of just my experience as at a college. I see a question that's outside of academics, and so happy to sort of take it to that direction and speak a little bit more to that community life on our campuses. Is there like what are some unique things at our colleges? For example, silent dance parties. That's hilarious that you mentioned that. There were silent dance parties at Carleton. I think they're not as common anymore. But we definitely had some of those. Carleton also is known for ultimate frisbee. If you're familiar with the sport, we have 6 teams for 2,000 students, and 4 of them went to nationals this past year. One of them won the Division I nationals this year, and our women's Division I team came in 2nd place. And so that is pretty absurd, even for a school that is a much larger school than just Carleton. But that's to say that every student at Carleton is does not does not leave campus without having a Frisbee. In fact, you get one the moment you step foot on Carleton's campus. And so there's this big tradition of a Frisbee toss right away for first year students to toss it towards like a flag in the middle of our main quad. And the person closest gets like a meal with the president. And so there's this great tradition around Frisbee, both from like this extremely high level, but also at a very casual level. And I think that's indicative of our community, that you can come as you are. You can come as this talented person in Frisbee, but you can also come never have touched a Frisbee in your life and pick it up and just have a more casual enjoyment of throwing a Frisbee with your friends out on the main quad. So lots of different opportunities there, and that's just but one of many traditions. But I'll pass it over to talk a little bit more for other schools.
I think the kind of unique thing, one of the unique things, I guess, about Macalester is an emphasis on the bagpipes. We are a like Scottish founded institution. Our mascot is the Highland cow, which, if you aren't familiar, is a like cow, except that it has like swoopy bangs over its eyes. They're very, very cute. But bagpipes are kind of ubiquitous on campus, so you'll see and hear them a lot. If there's anything exciting, particularly happening on a particular day, you might hear bagpipes sort of drifting through the air. So if a professor is receiving tenure, if there's any sort of graduation ceremony, beginning of the year convocation, there's always bagpipes. And even if you don't know what's going on campus that day, if you hear them, then you know that something exciting is happening. And along those lines, anybody can take free bagpipe lessons from the college. So it's a fun thing to try. I tried it for like half a semester. I'd never played a woodwind before, and it was really hard. So I did not stick with it, but you could. So that's a fun sort of unique thing about Macalester.
I can't say we're huge on bagpipes necessarily at Gettysburg, but you will hear, cannon fire and muskets every now and again, as we have a ton of Civil War reenactments in the area. We have the only marching band in our athletic conference, which is kind of cool. We play in the Centennial Conference, so we're playing against schools like Dickinson College, Franklin and Marshall. We do compete against Johns Hopkins, except for lacrosse, as they are D1 in lacrosse only. And I think the reason we have a marching band is because we have a conservatory of music. So that's kind of a unique like school of music offering that we have within the liberal arts at Gettysburg as well. One thing that transitioning back a little bit, because I think all of us have answered that question, but one thing I wanted to emphasize that David mentioned, and also especially because you said you were a bio major, right? Yeah. So I think sometimes people forget that we have science majors at liberal arts schools, because a lot of times students just say, or parents or counselors just say liberal arts colleges, when really we are liberal arts and sciences, right? So all of us have and offer science majors, and I bet some of them are pretty popular, and I bet some of the graduates from our institutions go right to medical school or PA school or nursing or PT school. So that I think is a common myth, and something that David was mentioning earlier about taking classes outside your major. I've seen that in a medical school outcome as well. So I was not a bio major, but my roommate at Gettysburg College, she pursued health sciences, and she went directly to medical school after graduating Gettysburg. And she said throughout medical school, everyone else was complaining about all of the, English assignments, all the writing assignments that they had to do. They were not prepared for that in undergrad. And she said, oh, we wrote so much at Gettysburg that it was, nothing. It didn't feel like much. And that was the liberal arts curriculum pushing her into some English classes, writing classes, and even integrating writing more in the other subjects. I'm seeing Rebecca's cat across the screen. So those outcomes, no matter where you end up, I think it goes to echo David's comments of that will help you no matter what technical career you're getting into.
Yeah,
To throw another abbreviation into the fold, sometimes we refer to places like Macalester, Gettysburg, and Carleton as LASC, Liberal Arts and Sciences Colleges. I know when we're doing our like on-campus info session presentation, we are using the term liberal arts and sciences institutions because it sort of accurately represents all the different things you can study at places like ours. At Macalester, at least about 40% of students major in a STEM department. So it's a really big part of campus. And all the things that Maddie said too are absolutely true.
Yeah, to add on to some of that, and to answer, I think the question that Maddie was getting at is like, are there majors that may not be good for a college? Not at all. I think that a lot of times, and this is, I guess, a pro tip as you're visiting like college fairs, right? Is like a lot of times students will just be like, what are your most popular majors? And that is like indicative, right, of like what many students might be doing on a college campus. But know that even the least popular majors on our campuses are extremely strong. Like we're even though they're small, they can still be mighty. Our colleges all have the resources, and again, this is sort of a big picture here. Our colleges have the resources to support all of the departments that we have. We're not trying to like cut or like limit or sort of create smaller departments because we are fortunate enough to have funding where we can support all of them. And so I think that's an amazing thing to think about is that even myself as like a biology major, biology is our most popular major on Carleton's campus, followed by computer science. That is like the biggest major, and then the smallest major on our campus is Chinese. I had a double major in both of those departments, and I can tell you that both of them were extraordinarily strong departments in their own rights. Sure, like some of the experiences you may have are going to be different in them, like the different clubs and activities and different like meet and greets that are sort of centered around biology are going to be way bigger. But there's still students that, even if they're not majoring in that department, are still going to be filtering through it because we have a language requirement. And so students want to just try taking Chinese. And then the Chinese majors and the Chinese minors in that department are able to connect with those students, sort of showcase them that department. And so all of that really builds on itself to say that even though there may be smaller majors or less popular majors at our colleges, that those are still very well supported and sort of can provide that future like oomph that you need or sort of show you that there is more than just that singular path towards that medical degree. And on the subject of medicine too, Carleton students, like you can be whatever major you want and still work with our pre-health advisor. And so I know people that have gone to medical school being like anthropology majors, for example, Rebecca, or even history majors. And so there's a lot of ways that students can have that interdisciplinary focus and be very well served for those future careers in science because they've learned both hard and soft skills at a liberal arts college.
Yeah, and I think even building on that to another level, there might be majors that places like ours don't offer that students are still able to take classes to get into an area after they graduate that is similar to where they would get if they had majored in that at a different college. So, for example, a student that I know came into college really interested in business and engineering, which are two areas we actually don't offer majors in at Macalester. He ended up majoring in computer science and economics, which are similar in some ways. They may not be, again, as directly led towards those career paths, but they have a similar broad basis of understanding computer science 1, 2, 3, 101, understanding the basics of economics. And then he ended up after college going to business school. So he ended up in that same direction just with a broader basis of education, with learning a little bit of lots of things, like we talked about with that breadth earlier. So even if there's an area that you might be interested in and you find a college that, hey, maybe it doesn't have this specific major, you don't necessarily need to count it out because the skills that you learn in whatever major you have can direct you towards that same place after you graduate. Something that we've been talking about in our office a lot is that a liberal arts college education is more about the degree than the major itself. So whatever major you choose, is totally fine. You're going to learn the skills that are going to be applicable in wherever you end up after you graduate because you have that degree that is based in all these different skills that are really, really applicable. So if that's something we can leave you with today, it's that this degree is really what gets you where you need to be after you graduate. And that means you can choose whatever major seems most interesting to you.
And I see that, I know Cindy asked a question and Maddie answered it awesomely. But to add on to that and to just like have space to talk about that as well, there is more flexibility at our schools. That's just like as Maddie says, like you are not locked into any one thing the moment you are on our campuses. You have that degree of sort of flexibility and the space within schedules and like even thinking on a day-to-day basis. This is unique to Carleton. We're on a trimester system, and so students are taking only 3 classes at a time. And so you're able to sort of just combine different classes and you get or 3 different times to register for different courses. And so you're taking 9 classes over the course of a year still. And so there's not like less hours per se, it's just broken up differently. And I imagine that that's also true for like other liberal arts colleges. It doesn't mean that it's a less rigorous experience than a large university. And in some ways, it's actually kind of the contrary because you're not going to be like in the back of a classroom. You're not going to be sort of able to like sort of just have a free-flowing experience, I guess. You will be like at the front and center. There is also like most frequently there isn't a back of a classroom. It is just like one row of students or a circle of students. And so you will be participating. You will be an active like member in your education. And so I think because of that, a lot of times our colleges are known for that rigor and sort of speaking to that ability to really support a student's deep academic curiosities and not just having them move through this degree. Like you will really be involved in sort of the things that you're doing on campus.
Yeah, we like to say it's really hard to be anonymous in the classroom at places like ours. Some classes might be larger than others, but at the end of the day, like we said earlier, professors are going to know you. They're going to know your name. They might even know your dog's name. They're really invested in your well-being and your success in and outside the classroom. So that means you're going to be involved in your learning. You're going to take a front seat to that. And so it's important to think about how important that is to you as you're building your college list.
So maybe we'll transition into the next question here about kind of distinguishing pieces of each of our colleges. And I think that's important because there may be some of you who have already toured some liberal arts colleges, and depending on how many, you're like, what is the difference? They're all the same. We're all about the same size. We all have small class sizes. We're all residential campuses. We may have Division III sports, whatnot. So it is important to distinguish them as you make your decision. And so for Gettysburg, at least, I mean, we are in a very historical location. However, history is not our most popular major, and you are not required to take a history major. Much to my dad's dismay, I think. He thought I was going to be taking all Civil War era studies classes. We do have a Civil War era studies program. We have a public history program, and we also have a museum studies track within our art history program. So there are a lot of options in that way. Now, the location, I think, is what I would speak more about. And Gettysburg is located, like I said, southern Pennsylvania, just about 10 minutes from the Maryland border. So from you guys, probably within an hour, hour and a half. And therefore, we're pretty close proximity to Washington, D.C. We're also pretty close to Baltimore, not too far from Philadelphia, PA, right? So we actually have a lot of public policy and political science kind of interest on our campus. One of our distinguishable programs, I would say, is our Eisenhower Institute, which offers programs free for students to sign up for that are either a semester long or a year long, and they all have some sort of policy theme, whether that be a domestic policy, an international affairs policy, right? Like we've had one on the Israel-Palestine conflict, we've had one on the housing situation in the US. And actually, President Eisenhower's granddaughter, Susan Eisenhower, is still a local to Gettysburg, still on our payroll, and she actually teaches one of these co-curricular programs through the Eisenhower Institute. So if you have any interest in politics or networking in the DC, Northern Virginia area, the Eisenhower Institute is definitely something to look into.
Yeah, so talking, I guess, about the what we say makes Macalester unique and distinctive amongst the amazing peers that we have, is our location and the focus on global citizenship. So mentioned earlier that we are in the Twin Cities. Our street address is in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is the capital of the state. The Twin Cities are St. Paul and Minneapolis. They're about 10 miles apart from each other, and we're right between the two of them. So we're in a very residential neighborhood, but you have access to everything that the cities have to offer. This is kind of unique because as you look into smaller colleges, many of them are in smaller towns, which certainly have their benefits as well. But that is just something that's different about Macalester, that we are in a more metro area. That means you can access things like internships during the semester. You can also go to a Twins baseball game. You can check out a new restaurant. You can go to a concert. There's just lots of opportunity being in a major metro. So location's a big one for us. I will say also we do have that residential campus feel while still having the metro as our backyard. But then yeah, global citizenship and internationalism is a really big part of life on campus. We have been flying the United Nations flag on our main flagpole since 1950. So it's been a long-standing commitment of ours to look at things from a global perspective. International studies is one of our most popular majors every year. And about 15% of our student body come from outside the US. If you include dual citizens, it's about a quarter of our student body. So we represent about 100 countries, speak about 80 different languages. Lots of different kinds of people make up the Macalester community from lots of different places with lots of different experiences and backgrounds and perspectives. That all is probably true at all three of our institutions and at lots of other liberal arts colleges too. We also have a really big emphasis on study away. So about 60% of students at Macalester do a semester away, typically during junior year. And that can look a lot of different ways. You can be in tons of different places. You can take classes for your major. You can take other classes. You can speak other languages if you want to. So the global citizenship, the internationalism theme really sticks with you throughout your 4 years, whether or not you end up studying away or just staying on campus all 4 years, and meeting people from lots of different places, learning from them, broadening your worldview from learning from their perspective. So yeah, urban-ish location and the global citizenship emphasis, I would say, are our distinctive factors.
Yeah, Carleton, what Kate highlights here is intellectual rigor. I think that that's true. But of course, like we're all educational institutions. And so I think there's certainly a level of intellectual rigor at all of us. But I think where Carleton really shines is in sort of the way that it provides opportunities for students to gain support and like experiences through like a truly very flexible curriculum. And so I mentioned the trimester system as something that I think is very significant and unique to Carleton. It's 3 10-week long academic terms, and students will typically just take 3 classes at a time. And so you are not having to think about 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 courses, like especially in high school, like you might be doing now. And it allows you sort of the pinnacle of breadth and depth, in my opinion, where you can dig really deeply into just 3 classes and still choose a completely different set of 3 classes 10 weeks later. Our students often joke that it's also a real piece of advice, is that they will go through their time at Carleton by taking 1 class that is required for their major, 1 class to fulfill liberal arts requirements, and 1 class just because. And so people have sort of this motto that a lot of times the classes that they're taking are classes that are simply appealing to them. Also, as a byproduct of this trimester system, Carleton has a 6-week-long winter break that starts right before Thanksgiving and goes until after New Year's. I have a twin brother, and he was on a semester-based program at a big research university. And seeing him for Thanksgiving and then the look on his face when I was like waving him goodbye as he left to go finish up his term or semester was kind of the greatest feeling in the world. And so when you're off at Carleton, you really are off. You have 6 weeks to study abroad, to do research, to rest and relax, to get a full-time job, to work with our career center and alumni, to find internship opportunities. And so there is this kind of great balance of like working hard and playing hard at Carleton. There is also, of course, a more standard like week-and-a-half long spring break between winter and spring terms. But even though that trimester sort of feels mechanically like a semester, it really does in sort of practice inform so much of how Carleton functions and sort of the rigor that it lends itself to. And so I think that is certainly a reason to consider the college. one of the other things that I also like to point out, and we always say like, right, like location, location, location. I'm sure you've heard of it. And so not to belittle the fact that locations are a unique feature of liberal arts colleges, but I think Carleton is also relatively unique there too. We have an 800-acre arboretum, so roughly the same size as Central Park, that is continuous with Carleton's campus. And so there's 15 miles of trails. So if you want to just go rest and relax, go pitch a hammock, have a little bonfire with some friends, like out in a forest or in a prairie, like you can do that. There's predetermined bonfire pits, so don't just be lighting a fire anywhere, please. But there are those opportunities to like just get into nature and sort of enjoy the fact that we are in a more rural location. But on the other side of Carleton's campus is this adorable town called Northfield. There's 20,000 people in the town, and so it's not so small that there's nothing to do, and it's not so gigantic that you'll get like swallowed up or you'll get lost or something like that. And at the end of the day, we are still close to our dear friends at Macalester, close to the Twin Cities. And so we're just 45 minutes south of Minneapolis and a major international airport at the same time. And so I think we're Carleton's sort of wedged between a lot of different things, which really lends itself to a dynamic atmosphere, even though it definitely is in sort of that small Midwestern town.
So I think maybe a good time to talk a little bit about financial aid. One thing that we have not touched on is that often at small liberal arts colleges, that initial sticker price, that comprehensive fee, is a pretty big number. I don't know about our colleagues, but usually in our like information sessions on campus, we do spend some time talking about this because we want to make sure we talk about like what paying for a liberal arts college actually looks like, because if you are to Google what is the tuition price at Macalester, it's a pretty high number, and that can be really intimidating. The actual reality of it is that the vast majority of students are not paying that full number due to financial aid resources. Now that looks different at every college. So I think maybe we can each speak to what that looks like at our individual institutions, but as a whole, my advice is don't count out colleges just because that initial tuition price looks scary, because in reality, it probably won't look that way at the end of the day if you were to receive your financial aid package after being admitted. There are lots of ways that schools can make that price a little bit less intimidating. So at Macalester, we offer both need-based aid and merit-based financial aid, two different kinds. Macalester meets 100% of demonstrated need with need-based aid. What that means is that when families fill out a FAFSA or a CSS profile, a financial aid application, our financial aid office will work with families to figure out what is the reasonable amount to contribute to tuition. Whatever the difference is between that and our comprehensive fee will be met with aid, 85% of which is grants, meaning it doesn't need to be repaid. The rest of it is usually a small federal loan and a work study, so campus job. So, if you have financial need, Macalester has the resources to help you with it. So again, the vast majority of students not paying that full number. Need-based aid is one side of things. Macalester also offers merit-based aids, which is scholarships for doing a good job in high school. About half of our students receive merit-based aid, and you don't need to submit any other application to be considered for it. So some students have one kind of financial aid, some students have the other kind, some students have a little bit of both, but it's about 90% of our student body that has one or the other or both. So that's a little bit about financial aid at Macalester.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point that Rebecca started with, is that I think that is also a myth that liberal arts colleges often get this rep of being super expensive. And right, as you said, the sticker price is, but the average that students are paying is really similar to a public institution or a research institution counterpart in a lot of ways. We have more resources to spend money on bigger scholarships and on financial aid, right? And if there's any parents in this info session, I would really strongly encourage exploring the net price calculator for any college, right? Every college will have a net price calculator on their website, and this is a form that you can fill out. right, to get an idea of what financial aid would look like, what that cost of attendance would look like for your child based on your family's financial need. So before you go and fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile, which are some of those financial forms you'll fill out the fall of your senior year, before that, you can get an idea, an estimate of price through the net price calculators. And the sticker price is really not to our advantage sometimes, right? But the reality is, like Rebecca said, probably about 90% of students get some form of scholarship or financial aid or both to make it more feasible. And they can be really, really strong financial aid packages that are sometimes less than, a lot of times less than their public institution or bigger school counterparts.
So Carleton does it a little bit differently, in that we do not have merit or scholarship-based aid at Carleton. And in fact, we just meet 100% of demonstrated financial need for all students, and we only provide need-based financial aid. This is a model that I actually don't know how many years ago we went with, but it is a way to sort of just have a more equitable process and sort of award financial aid based on a family's need, knowing that most students or all students that are coming to Carleton are going to be high achieving students. And so rather than parsing through like the grades you've gotten, we just sort of do it based on need. That being said, though, the average need-based grant from the college is going to be like roughly 90% of a student's financial aid award. So on average, that's about $60,000 a year that a student is receiving in a need-based grant, money they don't have to pay back. And then we still package with some manageable loans, and then student work is also part of our financial aid awards as well. And so that's sort of the three pieces of a Carleton financial aid award. And there isn't additional consideration for merit or scholarship-based aid, but we are giving very generous need-based offers. And the majority of students at Carleton are still receiving aid from the college.
I think Cindy had some good questions about scholarships. And let me just read them out loud. When do you apply for scholarships? Before or after your actual college application? Do you only get it once you are admitted? And can you get scholarships after your freshman year? So all really great questions. I think it's going to depend on the school when that scholarship deadline is. If you have to apply for the scholarship, they could require it at the same time as your regular application. It could be later, right? It also depends if this is a school-specific scholarship you're talking about, or if you're going through a national company or organization, or if it's a local scholarship through the American Legion or whatever. All of those deadlines are going to be different. With financial aid, that could also depend. Sometimes it is required that you fill out those financial aid forms at the same deadline as your application. Sometimes they do the financial aid after, right? Or sometimes you get in and then you fill out your financial aid forms, and the school packages you after that. Maybe Rebecca and David have answers on this that differ, but about scholarships post freshman year, we don't do that. So the scholarships you're given going into your freshman year stay with you. Unfortunately, you can't change or add on scholarships once you've already enrolled.
Yeah, so for us, if you are applying for need-based aid, you are going to be filling out that form for every year you are going to college. So if something changes in your situation, like one of your parents has a job change or some sort of financial difference, then your need-based aid could change. That could go in both directions. So that's worth keeping in mind, that information about your finances is going to be provided. You're going to provide it to the college for each year, and then your financial aid or need-based aid at least could alter based on any changes in your life. In terms of merit-based or other aid, if you were looking at scholarships for later on, you would probably, like Maddie was referencing, be looking at outside scholarships. So finding an organization that is separate from your college that can provide um, additional funding for you. Now, every school takes outside scholarships into account a little bit differently. I know at Macalester, we allow up to $10,000 of outside scholarships before we start subtracting essentially from the aid that we are giving you. And we don't take it directly like one for one out. It goes down by a percentage, which I can't remember exactly what it is. But every school does that a little bit differently. So, if you were to find an additional outside scholarship after your freshman year that provided for another $10,000 of your tuition, then great. That might look different if it ends up being more than that number at Macalester, but every school is a little different on that aspect as well.
Yeah, and I think this was mentioned before, but the shameless plug too, is that we know every single family situation is extremely different. And so our financial aid offices want to have those conversations. They want to talk with you about affordability, knowing that that, of course, is a huge factor for considering a college. And we also have tools to help students and families decide that fit. We all have financial aid calculators. So if you just search like Gettysburg or Carleton or Macalester financial aid calculator, like you will find links to those resources and you can enter in your family's information and it will give you a much closer look at that cost rather than just like a quick reference guide or something like that, or like a Google search even. And so I would recommend that you use those calculators and those tools because I think it does sort of shed light on that. Each school is doing those things slightly differently, right? Like all of our schools are providing fantastic financial aid to really sort of cut down that cost, but also know that each school has like slightly different methodology and that one calculator for one school might provide you a different number than a school, even though you have that same financial background. And so I think those tools are really great to use across schools, especially as you're shopping around, quite literally sometimes. And so I think I would just recommend that and plug that before we, I think, wrap things up in the next 5 or so minutes.
Yeah, it looks like question from Kate in the chat to sort of wrap us up. Yeah, all three of us went to the colleges that we are now working at, which isn't always the case. So we all have some kind of unique perspectives there. So can each of us give a sentence or two about something that's unique about your school, and would you go there again if you had to do it all over again? Um, yeah, I guess I can start. I think absolutely, if I could do it all over again, I'm really, really glad that I ended up where I did. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a step outside my comfort zone for sure to go a little bit further away from home for me. It was pretty intimidating at first, but I found Macalester to be a place where I was encouraged to try new things, to step out of that comfort zone while having that really like safe um, area community that people would be there for me no matter what would happen. So that community was really, really wonderful. I found that I grew immensely even just in my first semester, felt so much more independent, was able to do things like go study abroad that would have been really, really far outside my comfort zone had I done them before college. So I'm really grateful for my Macalester education. I think I've grown immensely from being part of that community and being a member of staff now. So yeah, and highly encourage folks, come visit Minnesota, come see us, come see Carleton and some of our other peers. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, to sort of fall right into that. I guess I should have said I was born and raised in Minneapolis. And so when I was considering schools, I wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. I wanted to not stay in the Midwest. I wanted to go somewhere else. But I would easily do this all over again. The moment I stepped foot on Carleton's campus, I think the community just felt so welcoming. And to me, I think all of our communities are like that intentionally small, welcoming community. I think Carleton has like a uniquely curious bunch of people where students are coming from all over the country, all over the world. About 18% of campus is Minnesotan, but they're all coming with unique passions to Minnesota, to small town Minnesota, to sort of experience it and to sort of have that collaborative Minnesota Nice. I'm shocked we made it through this entire thing, Rebecca, without mentioning Minnesota Nice before, but really like have that sort of caring sense of community with one another. And so people are learning from each other, from different academics, from different hobbies, extracurriculars, and everyone's sort of excited to share their ideas. And so I think, to me, Carleton is just this place of idea and like cultural exchange that is so unique in that it is also this Midwestern place, and people are sort of involved and vibing with that. When I talk to families from Massachusetts and from that area, they're like, oh my gosh, the car just stopped for me like at the stop sign or at the intersection and let me and my like family walk across the road without like honking or going wild. And so I think
Yeah, it's
that sort of
very
sense.
different vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Like people want to just take life a little bit slower, a little bit more casually. And I think Carleton definitely sort of embodies that by welcoming students from all over the world to campus to sort of enjoy that community and that sort of sense of camaraderie.
Oh, thanks. She's done a Gettysburg tour. Nice. That is the most realistic for all of you, probably. But you come to Gettysburg and then go back down to the airport and then fly to Minnesota. Sounds like a good plan for the rest of y'all's summer. So yeah, I would definitely choose Gettysburg again. It is such a cute little town. It's so interesting politically. It's a really interesting location, and for many other reasons. But I think the highlight that I would mention is our theme houses that we have on campus as a residential college, right? Everybody is pretty much required to live on campus all 4 years. So the first year, there's very traditional style dorms, two to a room, walk down the hall to the bathroom, right? After freshman year, you can choose to live in an apartment on campus, or a theme house, or a hotel style dorm. Lots of different options, but our theme houses are pretty unique. So if you want to live in, sort of a fraternity house, but it has an academic theme or a fun theme, religious theme, you can live with folks that share a common interest with you, which is really cool. So for example, we have a Hillel house, we have a STEM house, we have a couple different music theme houses. I'm pretty sure Ultimate Frisbee had a house at one point. We have a farmhouse for sustainability. So really fun to be able to live with other students, and have a house of your own with a kitchen and a living room and host events there, and everything like that. So if you do come up to Gettysburg and you see some blue plaques, some Gettysburg branded plaques on the buildings, that might be a theme house right there. But I know David and Rebecca have put their emails in the chat. I'll try to put mine, but mine's in the top, so just scroll up. But thank you for having me.
All right, I'm going to stop this recording.